Yo, everybody, we are up and live. Greetings, everybody. From a cold South Africa's winter time. It's winter time at us now. So if you're outside of the, yeah, it is. So if you're outside of South Africa, yeah, please enjoy the sunshine and send some of the heat, via. I don't know. You can email basically anything these days. So if you want to send us heat, you can. I'm sure you can. Everybody, just to pick up my last guest starter for coming through with episode 130. My sister, it was actually outstanding speaking to her. And if you guys caught that episode, we spoke about the township economy, which is a theme that I want to carry. That I do have another guest lined up. It was just a scheduling thing, and we couldn't schedule in time. But that is something I want to talk a little bit more of and unpack other entrepreneurs' brain on how they're dealing, how they're working with the township economy. So look forward to that. I'll probably be doing that for the rest of the year, to be fair. So there will be plenty of more content around that. Also, just I'm sure you guys, if you are familiar with the Art Lexcia YouTube page. So I've been doing a lot of shorts, YouTube shorts, also just to keep the content machine running. And it seems to be working. It'll be nice if it can be if there can be a zero behind each. Guys are watching, but hey, man, I always feel it can be more. But thanks to everybody for watching. So far I think I've done about just over 30 or 40. But I'm not doing many more. I think I'm gonna be doing about 2 a day. Depending on the load shedding schedule and so forth and so forth. And that's just to keep the content machine running. And for YouTube's algorithms and the SOE I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And also just actually I made this point. It's actually something that I've actually never addressed. I think since I've moved to video, is that I've noticed that the sound isn't always that great, but shit, man, I'm trying here, and even now, early on, we tried to use Zencaster again, but it's not adaptable for everyone's device, so we have to always revert back to Zoom. So it is something I am aware of, and it is something I'm trying to improve. So that's that. So yeah, guys, thanks for that. But moving on to today's episode, we're talking literature today. We're talking to Sihle. My brother, I actually I didn't write your surname down. I almost said Sihle. Ntuli. Shit. I was gonna give you another surname. I should write down more often. But we're talking to Sihle Ntuli he's the new editor-in-chief of New Contrast Journal, which is gonna be interesting. And to my right over there, we have an old friend of mine, Kabelo Mofokeng. So firstly, gentlemen, greetings. Happy Friday. I hope you guys are warm and good where you are. Let's start off with Sihle. How are you doing, Mikey?
Oh, I'm great. I'm great. It's great to see Kabelo again. We saw each other on Wednesday, and yeah, meeting Wesley for the first time. But I've heard your name. I've heard you through the grapevine. I've heard a lot about you as well. So thanks for having me. Yeah.
Thanks, my brother. Thanks. I'm flattered. Kabza, I hope it's warm in Soweto today. Yeah, man. I hope you're good.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Morning, gentlemen. So great to have both my friends on the same platform, both who are wonderful people, first of all, and creative. And yeah, thanks for having me here to join you in this conversation with.
For sure. Thanks, bro.
Yeah.
So to all my listeners, they mentioned that they had a show on the Wednesday, which was the 24th of May. It was the 200th edition of New Contrast. Now that is outstanding. I think that's a good point to start off. 200 editions is for literary journals South Africa is simply outstanding. So well done to the entire editorial, everybody behind the publication, and much congrats to that. Yeah, there's the copy. Much love to that. So, Sihle, let's start off with you, my brother. You are now the new editor-in-chief. Offline, we spoke a little bit about what direction you're looking to take the publication in. Let's start off there.
Yeah. grateful for the selection with the board, you know, new horizons ahead, and we are just going to introduce a very Pan-African view. Like most of my editorial decisions are going to be informed by the Pan-Africanism, and of course, we want to just contextualize the literary journal as existing in South Africa on an African continent as well. Of course, you're going to be reflective of the demographics of the country, which I feel that wasn't done before. I want to see more Black writers, young Black writers in such spaces, because it was very hard for me to even get into a literary journal when I was starting out as well. So I want a journal that is very South African and sort of is reflective of the demographics, and also speaks to the Pan-African world of literature and the diaspora, our African brothers who stay in the UK and the US. That's my vision in general. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Can you just take us right to the beginning, man? So for those guys who's not familiar with New Contrast, what is the journal about? Would you guys publish?
Yeah.
You know, just give us like a small blurb about that.
All right, so the journal was started in the 1960s, and had a long history of editors, but our first mainly Black editor was part of a collective, Mtutuzeli, and I think Kabelo is familiar with him. And so now Masande Nchanga is who I'm taking over from as well. So it's just a journal, a literary journal, one of South Africa's oldest literary journals. We publish poetry, we publish prose, nonfiction and fiction, and we also publish artwork by artists such as yourself, Wesley. If you want something and send us something our way, feel free.
I will take you up on that.
Yeah. And so, yes, it's just a South African magazine. And yeah, we're just trying to show everybody that we're still here, we exist 60 years later, or however many years. My math is really bad, but yeah, we're here, and we're here to just take New Contrast and make it contemporary. That's my main thing as well. Yeah.
Kabza, you got anything to add on top of that, my brother? Given that they've been around since the 60s?
Yeah. That's a journey, man.
It is.
It's a milestone. 200.
It is.
200th version of 200th edition of the book.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first thing I would like to sort of discuss with Sihle is maybe for him to kind of give us a sense as to how was it like your first encounter with New Contrast, or the idea of publishing in a literary journal. How important was that for you? And then how did you discover, or rather your first encounter, maybe to take us through your journey regarding your first encounter with New Contrast, and then maybe as you now sort of move from being a published poet and now being on the other side, so to speak, as the editor.
Yeah, well, I have to go back to Makanda for that story. I have to go back to my time at Rhodes. That's where me and Kabelo actually met as well. Kabelo was doing his MA in creative writing, and I was doing my MA in classical studies or ancient history. So I go back to my first year, and we had to buy English books at this bookshop, and then I stumbled upon the work of Setlamo Motsape's, specifically Earth Depper, The Ocean is Very Shallow, and also 10 Flapping Elbows Mama by Khulumalo. And another one I found was Kabelo Mofokeng's White Heart as well. So I looked all these collections, and I saw myself in the township experience as well as the Black experience. And I wanted it. I wanted what they had on the collections. And so it was a way of finding how I would get to the point of being able to publish with a publisher as well. And one of the first things during the research process of trying to find a way to break in the literary world was this whole recurring thing of submit to literary journals. Like most of the websites were saying the exact same thing. And the literary journal around at the time was New Coin, which is based in Makanda as well. It's associated with the Rhodes University. It was also Potsotso. They were a print journal at the time. Now they're moving to online. They have an open submission period for June. and there was New Contrast as well. My first submission was to New Coin, rejected, and of course New Contrast was also rejected as well. So I had to work my way up and really improve my craft and yeah, work at it. And eventually, New Contrast was one of the first that accepted my work back in 2012 or 2013, somewhere around there. And so it's one of your literary practice or literary training ground if you want to eventually have a collection or a book. If you're a poet, also for a short story writer or a novelist, it's a great place to exhibit your skills. The literary journals I'm speaking of now. And of course, to put your name out there as well. I always talk about the literary world in musical terms. So it's like being part of a mixtape and a collection of like these rappers, you know, you want to put your name out there. So, you know, I was submitting to literary journals, New Core, New Contrast, but also I've been on all of them. And I've built my name up to the point where I can get offered these positions. And it's such a wonderful experience to now come full circle and be the one who actually is taking the work in. And I know how it feels to struggle as a nobody in this literary genre. And I want to make the journey for young Black writers and even the queer community and disabled community to feel welcome at New Contrast. So that's why it's so vital for me to be in this space as well, this position. And I understand the responsibility of the role. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Kabza, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just on that role regarding you as somebody who's a practicing poet and also now finding yourself in the role of an editor. I mean, a lot of people would think that you're a young poet, right? In terms of not necessarily an aspiring poet, as in like you have 2 books that you have and you already that you have published, and you already have another one that's upcoming with Botsotso. So you know, you've got your ground well read. However, in terms of I mean, being a lot of the time you find that most editors are not just, and they're almost like old white men, isn't it? Often. Yeah, who are probably at the end of their retirement or something. I don't know. They've probably been writing for so long. However, at this point, they're probably so keen to read what's like a sort of or rather engage with a new wave of writing, right? However, you find yourself in a position where you are currently, you know, in an editing position, you know. So yeah, can you discuss a little bit about that?
Yes, well, you know, I can't ignore the politics of everything. Like my being a Black editor in a very white space is probably why someone like me would be attractive to New Contrast as well. But it also is addressing the imbalances of the past, of which I'm willing to help insofar as that and addressing the imbalances. And yes, I agree with you fully. A lot of the publishers, or rather the editors of journals before, were white, particularly old men who didn't really understand, like, you know, I can't talk about Andre 3000s, you know, forever, ever, from Miss Jackson to them. They wouldn't know, you know, and, you know, some other sort of hip hop theories, urban, contemporary, you know, I can't really, you know, they can't really relate to that. But with me, if somebody wants to include that in their work, I can relate to that. And of course, because of my education background in the classics, if someone wants to mention Aeschylus or, you know, Sophocles or whatever, I can tap into that as well. So yeah, I consider myself pretty valuable to the role. And so yeah, the whole idea of being adaptable and understanding where poetry is now and where it's going as well in terms of international trends is something that I'm also quite familiar with. I'm quite active on the sort of journal circuit. So by journal circuit, I mean I submit quite regularly to international publications. I have a few coming out this year as well on some really notable publications. So as someone who's active, I can contribute with like the trends of literary journals in the country and bring them here and make us an active, not even competitor, but an active voice in the literary journal scene as well. Yeah.
Sihle, you mentioned something there that that resonates with me. Firstly, I like the how you compared a journal to like a hip hop mixtape. You know, that really relates. I'm sure that
Yeah,
makes it explains it to a younger generation. But on top of that, like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I find that example quite interesting. That's a very contemporary example, very modern. You mentioned about the
Yeah.
state of poetry in 2023. Where do you think the poetry scene is, and
Mm,
what are people writing about, and or you know, what are you? Yeah, let's just start there. I have a few other
okay.
questions, but let's just start with that. So where do you think the poetry scene is, and where do you think it's moving to?
Yeah,
Mm,
well, I always think about poetry in terms of like, geographical regions as well. Like Durban is your spoken word hotspot. Like I have a feeling it links to the oral history, the oral tradition of Izimbongi. So that translates to a lot of spoken word poets coming out of there. And also very important to note that Black writers in particular are self-publishing a lot of their work as well, because of sort of this interest to have their voices stifled by white editors,
That's an
who
interesting point.
might
mm,
who might impose themselves. So we have someone like Zizu Popam, who released Sunflowers for My Lovers, I think it's called, and independently of any white editors. And we also have Zamamati Nana, who
Mm.
has his new collection 94. Zama was actually at the launch on Wednesday, also releasing independently. And we have Kwazin Tlangisa as well, who's from KZN, releasing independently. So we have a lot of Black authors taking the independent routes, which is something I wanted to make note of. But then you also have your more established publishers as well. You have, of course, Potsotso, which is publishing my new collection, Zabalaza Republic. You have Uhlanga, which is on a bit of a hiatus at the moment, and you have Riot Press, based in Cape Town. A couple of others, but these are the ones that I'm quite familiar with that they're releasing work at the time. And so to state of poetry now is it's just based on where you are. Cape Town has a very lively page poetry scene. A lot of the releases actually have a platform to sort of perform their work. There are online platforms such as I think it's called Red Wheelbarrow, and there's also another one called I forget the name, an open mic platform that's online, and it's just a way to promote the reading in Cape Town. But yeah, poetry in Cape Town, I'd say, is like, if you want to have your name out there, it's a good space. But in Johannesburg as well, what I found is that there's so much vibrant arts world going on here. Like it's really been a great scene. Like some of the top voices are out here as well, just doing their thing.
mm,
So it's just mainly about between page and performance poetry,
mm,
and I feel like both of them are really doing well. But of course, page poetry, we have a lot to work on as well. Like we are excluded from very major sort of prizes in the country. I almost become a soldier for page poetry
mm.
because of the lack of that we do receive in terms of like recognition, all of that. But yeah, got a lot to work on. But again, we need to sort of knuckle down and work on it as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just I mean you make reference to Michael King, the editor, and basically in terms of his stylistic approach.
Mm,
Um, I mean, the other day we're looking at Mazisi Kunene's we're reading from Mazisi Kunene's epic poem,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you know we found that actually the Zulu version of the book, or rather
Mm-hmm.
the Zulu version of the epic poem, was the first one which was actually written then translated into English, right? And
Yeah.
then, however, it was not published until very recently.
Mm-hmm.
So stylistically, and also in considering the inequalities structurally in
Mm,
terms of South Africa, whereby
mm,
obviously English has often taken premise over local languages.
mm, mm,
And stylistically, how do you find the balance in your approach, and also in considering the fact that you actually, just as much as you might say that you are a warrior of page poetry, oral tradition is often been part of your tradition, isn't it? I mean, it's you feel on both involuntarily, right? Yeah. So
Yes, of
stylistically,
course.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, in terms of like, I'll speak first as like the editor of New Contrast. Like I want to introduce more Zulu work, Xhosa work, Sotho work in the magazine, just to show that English isn't the only language we speak in South Africa. Like the journal itself is something that can be taken out of the country and shown. So this is what South African life is like with regards to the perspective of the artist, of the writers, of the painters, etc. And it's very important for me to actually give a space for indigenous languages as well, because the whole pessimistic view of it's not marketable, I think it's nonsense. We need to try it at least and preserve these languages as well. But insofar as my own approach, I am paying homage to the greats that came before me. Like as far as I try to, when I'm writing it, I do always make reference to say Tlamo Motsape, who was a big influence for me to be here, and Kulin Malo. And yeah, as far as it goes, like it's important to pay homage to the ones who came before, who paved the way. And I do incorporate elements of Zulu language in my work still, because the whole idea of making my work very comfortable for white people is something I don't want to overdo as well. Of course, readability is important, but it's still, my audience is very much Black. I'm writing for Black people. Whoever reads it, but my unapologetic viewpoint is a Pan-African point of view. I want my Zulu ethnicity to speak to Yoruba culture, and we can have that conversation on the page, on my poetry. But yeah.
Sihle, I just want to make a follow-up question there. I wanted
Thank
to,
you.
and I'm glad. Thanks to Kabelo for bringing up that question, because about the different languages. I wanted to ask you as a follow-up question on that, and new markets, my brother.
Yeah.
You're saying there that you have a Pan-Africanist viewpoint, and much love to that. Much love to that. If we look at the continent, there's 54 countries on the continent. We're actually quite similar. West, East, South Africa. We're actually quite similar. More than most.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you get it. Are you guys looking to sell? I mean, like, are you guys looking to where are you guys looking to expand? Are you guys looking to start new markets? Where are you guys looking to get new readers? And let's just unpack that one a little bit.
Yes, we are always looking to expand. Well, that's my vision. I just got here, but yeah, already looking for ways to expand. Very dynamic with the way I want to sort of approach this new regime. So I have invited friends of mine from other African countries. Like one of them was Loic Kinga from the Democratic Republic of Congo to submit to us. And he really delivered a great performance. I see Kabelo was giving us a young. And yeah, like I have made great connections with Pan-African writers. TJ Benson from Nigeria, very prolific novelist, is a great friend of mine as well. And so the first move in terms of like this new regime is first to stabilize. I think that's the most important thing for me, to stabilize the magazine, because yeah, subscribers and readers need to have pride in the magazine of where it's going. And then of course to bring in the Pan-African writers to join us on the magazine. We did have a number of them. We had an entrance from Uganda as well in 200, of which was my first get edited journal or edition as well. So the whole idea is to move slowly, first have the writers, and then of course we can start having the conversations about the stockists in other African countries. But the digital medium as well, with the pandemic, that we've gone digital, a lot of us. And so the digital medium of having digital editions will be a great help while we try and establish the physical markets of how to get physical copies of New Contrast where they need to be on the African continent. Because even the shipping of magazines is quite expensive on the African continent for some odd reason, but that's the truth of it. And for now, we'll work with digital. We'll invite authors, notable authors, and even emerging authors as well to contribute to New Contrast. But yeah, our lens, our focus is very much Pan-African.
Yeah. Just maybe maybe it's a comment rather, and maybe Wesley can also, sort of come into this, developing an audience, right? For one thing, I remember with Reunited Siblings, which was the publication that Wesley was partly in charge in running, and who also published some of the more spoken word, Josie's Bay spoken word, and other people throughout the country. And I think one of the things that I remember, which was very important in running and developing a market in that regard, was developing spaces for reading and performance, and working those spaces, So consistent readings are often able to kind of entice people to get exposure to different forms of different styles, different approaches in writing or performance. And I think that's one of the things that I think was very important in also marketing, creating a market for not just poets, but also visual artists such as Wesley and other people who may be interested in the craft from elsewhere. I don't know, what is your approach in this regard in terms of getting the literature to the readers and creating maybe opening up a new platform for new readers?
Yeah, well, I take that comment, in terms of like just having a space where people can even interact in person, because I think that's what took away from us during the pandemic. We weren't able to meet each other, even have discussions about the arts. And I did release my own collection in 2020 called Rumbling.
Yes.
But we suffered greatly because we couldn't have any physical launches. Most of our launches were limited to Zoom readings, of which, it was so much more difficult to sell a book over or online because, you can't convince somebody to buy something not having the physical presence of being there. So the event that we had on Wednesday was very important, just to touch base with people, to let them know that New Contrast is around, we're here, and we want to have more events like that as well in different parts of the country as well. But of course, it was a start. It was a great start. Attendance could have been better, but it was going to be difficult to have an event in the middle of a week from 2 to 4 on a weekday. But it's just a signal of intent that was important for me to say that we're here and we're going to have such spaces, and we're going to do it in different ways to my predecessors. And of course, hopefully have the sort of the drive to do it again and encourage other literary journals to do the same. Yeah,
man, I'd just like to raise a comment there on it's interesting what you say, whether the show on the 24th were like being at 2 o'clock, midweek, and so forth. So yeah, that's a bit awkward for working class people, I understand that. I also the point you said on like your publication that you did during the lockdown, with the limitations of Zoom or rather virtual meetings and so forth. I just want to make a point on those two things there. What I'm trying to encourage a lot on this platform is for collaboration between various creatives, like myself, yourself, and Kabelo. Kabelo's also got a book. Hunger and Arrival is done, and they're busy marketing that too. I see a lot of potential behind the virtual world. and I just want to highlight just a few points there. I just think that I don't really think we understand the how far we can push the technology, and how we can use the technology, because I think Zoom is only just one platform. There's actually multiple, and there's also I've spoken to a few to a few visual artists that also uses Instagram pretty successfully. You would think there's also a lot of fluff on Instagram, but there's also guys making maybe not good money, but they are. And I also find it interesting on how creators are using the various social media platforms. So what you post on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and so forth, and how they use. I just find that is a conversation that one can workshop in much greater detail. It's also something that I also believe is the future of our industry. I know one thing, and many artists, musicians, and so forth can testify, is that in doing an event, the turnout might not always be so great, and even though the turnout there, not everybody there is there to spend money. That doesn't mean that they don't. It's just that the people who spend money do exist, and who's going to invest in the product are there. It's just how to get hold of them. And I think that point there is a very, very interesting thing to talk about, because we have 5G technology. We can. I mean, this sounds a bit sci-fi-ish. So, but we can actually have holograms, bro. I mean, imagine that, like, when we started off in the late 90s, early 2000s, saying something like that sounded, very Hollywood. It sounded very sci-fi, something you would just get in a book. But the technology exists, and we can use it. And I think one thing that I'm also very excited about the time that we are in now is where creators like ourselves here can actually pioneer on this and set the standard. I do believe one of my goals, and I want to mention this on this platform, is in a few months' time is with let me put it to you like this: with a sport match, if you have 50,000 people in a stadium, that is considered like the benchmark. You say like, yo, whatever event, whatever sport here is successful. I do believe we can do that for the arts, and I'd like somebody actually, if there's somebody that want to challenge me, I'm definitely up for that. And when I mean 50,000 people, I'm meaning on digital platforms. Because, like, if you look at the English-speaking population in India, I mean, there's cats listening to this podcast in India. I mean, I find that fascinating, and they are returning listeners. I find that fascinating that somebody whose culture is, completely different than ours is finding, found this podcast and is tuning in every week. There's obviously all the other English-speaking countries, Australia, the UK, and so forth. And there's also the African diaspora, which is also a very, very interesting market. That actually relates back to the earlier point about new markets. The African diaspora I also think is a very lucrative market as well, and how do we tap into that? I respect a lot about how artists work to refine their work and to make sure that it is, that the editing and so forth, or the producing, if you're a musician, is on point, because they respect their craft. But I also think we should have that same effort for marketing and for I find it actually I've been on the receiving end where I spend months on a body of work just to sell one piece, and it's not because of this, that. It's just that the work itself wasn't you couldn't see it, you couldn't access it, and it's that point of access which I think is quite, and I really do think that we can workshop these ideas, and we can really expand, because there's a few other viewpoints. I'm just giving you an overview of everything. There's a lot of nuance, details which one can expand on, and that's just my point. And just in closing, gents, like, we just got about 2 minutes or so of this session. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna wrap up this session. Just send you guys a new link, and then we'll pick up all those other points on the other session. And just to my listeners, if you guys are listening, remember to like, subscribe, and comment to this channel. And it'll be interesting to know what you guys have to say about the points that we've raised so far. So to my guests, guys, gents, I'll see you in about a minute's time. Salute.
Wait, could you just remind me of the last point again?
Sorry, Sihle, what do you say?
Just the last point. I didn't get what before from the other one. My mind a bit blank.
Okay. I'll mention that. Okay, everybody, we are back. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment on this channel. Like I mentioned in the beginning, that we are using the Zoom, the free thingy, because these other apps, are not always compatible with all our devices in South Africa. But that's fine because we are entrepreneurs. We are building our own platforms. Gallery 360 Africa is coming. It is happening, and everybody on this platform will hear about it. Because we are tired of China and America setting the trends. We are tired of that. We want our own platforms. We want it for us, by us. That is just, and we will not compromise. So just to touch base on Sihle, you were just comment on the earlier point. Basically, what I was just the point I was just trying to make is that there's room for collaboration on where we can what's the right word? Not harness, but get more people to go to log in and buy. That's the main thing I wanna push. Is just to see how we can sell. Just another point. I'll just make this point, and I'll bring Kabelo in. One thing that I noticed with the hard lockdown, which is now 3 years ago, which it sees like it was just the other day, literally. The whole world was busy, was escaping through some form of expression, whether it be books, music, TV, movies, etc. And the heartbeat of all of that is a writer, or a creative director or visual artist, whatever. But he's a creative. In other words, I always like to believe that art actually saved the world, because without our creativity, I don't think anybody across the world would have. I just don't think they would have survived. I really don't. And if anybody wants to argue with, or I don't know why I keep prompting people to argue with me today. I must have woke up on the wrong side of the bed.
You want that smoke? Yeah. Yeah.
But my brother, just hold on, just before I make Kabza, your screen looks frozen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to say to Sihle, like, congratulations on this issue. It's a wonderful read. Also, I'm one of the contributors in this issue, and one of the things that you mentioned, I'll just quote your words here, which is to say, okay, New Contrast marks the historic 20th edition of the literary journal, which is in itself a major milestone in the context of the very many literary magazines that have been founded and folded, right? I'll just take it from there. In terms of, my question is not so much about what drives most literary journals to fold, right? Or maybe rather, the point that I'm trying to drive at is towards, it seems like there are only a few intellectual communities or literary journals like Botsotso that have a New Contrast, that have sort of outlived and that have existed for as long and still continue to thrive or to flourish under the difficult circumstances. So in contrast to perhaps this idea of commercial sector, or moving the arts towards a commercial space, it seems like these literary journals or these intellectual communities have been able to exist even with minimal support. And it seems like maybe it is mostly the more serious or the more serious spaces that seems to exist without the support. So the support probably comes from somewhere internally, from the muscle that is pushed by the people who are committed to that particular structure or that particular community, that specific community, that book club, that space that that is able to create a platform for these thinkers to continue developing their work. So it seems, on the other hand, the more these kind of spaces move towards thinking about going towards the commercial sector, they become watered down, don't they?
Well, yes.
So that's a good
It's one of
point.
the things that we are really trying to keep the lights on as well at the end of the day. Like, you know, to be creative and to retain your integrity while still doing good work that will actually feed you is a very difficult tightrope that we walk. And that whole thought of selling out is one of my big fears as well as a poet individually before I become an editor. There are certain spaces, for instance, just going on a bit of a tangent, with regards to festivals, that I have the honor of not being invited for, but the day that that happens, I have to really introspect and see if I can really enter those spaces and what it does for my integrity as well. And in that sense, once we bring it back to the essence of your question, which is the whole literary magazines actually folding, it's about building community for me. You got to build a stable set of people that will be there and say, New Contrast is one of our community. And Botsotso, New Contrast, New Coin has managed to do that in some extent. Not perfectly, but of course, these are things that we can build upon. Uh, the subscriber model for New Contrast is effective for them. It's worked as well as it has so far. But then there has been a sharp decline with regards to subscribers in recent times. So what we're doing now, or what I intend to do now, is to build the community, the New Contrast community. In the editorial, I did make reference to a Steve McQueen movie from the Small Axe anthology called The Mangrove or Mangrove, which was about the community, the English or the Caribbean community living in Notting Hill, and how they defended the establishment, the restaurant, with all that they had. And I'm really trying to build that for New Contrast as well. I want to build a trust in the magazine to the point where people will be willing to speak about the magazine outside of South Africa, and of course recognize it as one of their own. And I'd encourage that for Botsotso. I'd encourage that for New Coin as well. And of course, I am very familiar with Botsotso. Botsotso is a home to my own writing. And so I always engage with them. It doesn't need to be a space of competitors. We're collaborators well with Botsotso. So going back to Wesley's previous point about opportunity for collaboration, it's always a space. There is always a chance for us to collaborate with Botsotso, with Ucoin, and even in the African continent as well. I do know the editor-in-chief of Pepper Coast Lit, Jeremy Khan, and Lloyd Kakinga himself is editor of TiVo Tribe as well. So there's always opportunities. The hard lockdown, as much as it was a bad time, it also opened up a platform like Zoom for us to actually communicate and see each other, and talk with each other as well. So the whole building of community is one of my big points, and that's why I made reference to that movie. Great movie, by the way.
Yeah. I've seen it. Brilliant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, thanks for
I
that.
just wanted to sorry, Kabelo, man. I wanted to just raise a point. One of my favorite MCs, and I've said this on this platform a few times. Immortal Technique said there's a market for everything, and then he sort of breaks it down what he means, and I believe him with that. Just to Kabza, you made a point of like, in order for your product to sell, it needs to be watered down. That's actually quite true, and I mean, you can just look now for pop music, for example. But I'd like to believe that there is smart people out there. I do believe that there are people that wants to consume our product. I don't believe, and I don't think we should compromise. I think I'm actually quite emotional about like emotional is probably an emotional word, but it is what it is. That I don't think we should compromise. I just don't think so. I do believe that there is. I mean, I just don't think we should come. I do believe there is a market out there. It's just how do we tap into it? Which I want to come back to the point that Sihle made about building communities and about your subscription base. And I actually wanted to pick your brain a little bit about that. I had a look at your Facebook page. I mean, you have the excess about just under 2,000 likes, or your like pages, which is substantial, which is substantial. I mean, if you break that number down, if if a fifth, if half of those guys buy, and I mean buy every publication every month, that's I don't know if that if that will, if numbers will that be able to sustain you. I'm not sure, but I do believe that if at least like half of that, at least it's something. So, which actually leads to my question. What other tools or tricks is not the right word, what other gimmicks you guys have in order to get subscription, to grow the subscription base, and what are you guys offering? I just want to make one point on that, and then I'll leave it up to everybody. Are you guys familiar with Patreon?
Yes, we are. I am
Okay,
familiar with
so
Patreon.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah. If you want to
so I'm
continue.
sort of using that as a model. So once you have a subscription base, you offer your subscribers things over the course, which I think is actually which is a good model. So based on that, yeah, do you guys have any ideas on how to monetize your subscription base?
Yeah. Well, to begin with, I will make the point of saying that we do need donations and subscribers to keep us afloat. So I'm going to emphasize that point. It's very important that I say, donation subscribers, But at the end of the day, I'm in a position where I need to also find ways to fundraise as well. It's not all glamorous of being an editor in this role. So what I've decided to try and do is to have more of these events. And while I am there in person, I can just speak to people and literally ask them to subscribe. Also, there'll be a few high school library initiatives, drives to libraries, because that's where the young writing community is going to start off.
Yeah, man.
Imagine if I just imagine myself if I was approached in high school by a journal editor, where I'd be now, starting from that young age of submitting to journals. And by the time 10 years from high school, you have an idea of where you want to be. And of course, the growth as well. The work I was writing at 25 is not the same work that I'm writing at 30. It's not the same work I'm writing now. I'm not going to expose my age as to where I am, but I'm an old man now. I'm a young old man. So just speaking to high school libraries and public libraries is what I plan to do as well. And of course, retaining the subscribers that we have. And of course, Patreon is not a bad idea. It's just a matter of these things of the conversions of the US dollars and like how we work out with that. Because most of these things, these platforms are from the West or the Northern Hemisphere, but we'll figure that out. It has to be feasible, but if it makes sense, we'll do it. Like, I think one of the most important things about sustaining a magazine is being adaptable. And as far as New Contrast has gone, where it's been adaptable. It's the only platform that uses Submittable, which is a submitting platform. So writers will submit their work through there, and we can sort of let them know that the work is in progress, or it's been read, or it's been accepted, declined, or whatever. So this whole idea of being adaptable and speaking directly to our readers or subscribers is one of the few tricks that we can use. But of course, there's always room for improvement, and we're always looking for ways to increase the subscriber base, to give the readers, subscribers, the writers a better platform. And of course, it all takes money. That's the harsh reality of it. It takes some money. Yeah.
Well, I also think one of the successes of this particular publication or issue for me, it's how you mentioned, high school scholars coming into the exposure of literary journals, and I think you've been able to slot them in very nicely in here. Although I see most of them come from convents, I also went to one, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I just thought about that. What does that mean? You know, I mean, a convent still the H nowadays. But you know, but
Oh
on the
wow.
other hand, what I also kind of enjoyed in this particular journal is although it's predominantly written or the language that is predominantly used is English. However, you know, for me, what I enjoy about it is how it seems like I could almost move from one particular Black writer and maybe almost have like share or rather get publish one Black writer next to a white writer. For example, the lady what's her name, Robin Perros. You know, I could almost move from reading one township story and reading one which is in her world, and they almost kind of exist on the same kind of how can I say, the language of imagination. It's almost you know, it's almost in conversation, you know. So even though there's high school material in this book, I don't feel like I'm reading like a junior's work. I'm really reading rich poetry that comes from the voices of this land. And I think that's a very lovely balance. And I mean, what went, I'm also interested in what informed this approach in the editorial.
Okay. Well, yeah, this was my first edition, guest editing, and New Contrast 201, of which we're revealing the cover on Wednesday, will be my second edition that was guest editing. So my first edition as editor-in-chief is 202, which is set to come out in July as well. So July will be very busy. And so because it was the historic 200th edition, I must give credit to Robin Milan from English Alive, who actually compiled that high school section of the poetry. And I just thought that all of the poetry there, because I was supposed to make a submission of only 2, and I just took the whole batch because it would mean so much to a high school student to have their work featured on New Contrast, especially for the 200th edition as well. And we're looking to do that also independently of English Alive for ourselves, just so we can have, yeah, like you said, convent poets. I noticed that as well. I want to have township poets. I'm willing to go to Gamashu and, you know, speak to those guys and see what if they'll be willing to send us some stuff. I'm willing to go to, I'm willing to speak to high schools, Black high schools, Black townships, and see if they'd be willing to do that. And with regards to just the way it was chosen, I literally did pay attention to the sequencing of the poems, especially. Though I was disappointed that we didn't get a lot of short story submissions from Black writers, of which now I'm actually soliciting work for 202. Yeah, it's just something I have to be very blunt about, to say that most of the Black writers participate in poetry writing, though we did actually include a short story in isiXhosa in 201, but it's not merely enough to satisfy my vision of just balancing the demographics, of which I hope to address as well during my regime. Otherwise, yeah, like we just need to be intentional about just having Black, white, Indian, colored representation. It must be reflective of the countries. When you take this book with you on your travels, Kabelo, if you're on a world tour and you go to the US and you say, this is from back home, they must understand what back home feels like.
Absolutely.
And that's my main goal. Yeah.
He's relate.
Yeah.
Africa.
Definitely.
Nice one.
Thank you.
Sihle, like moving forward, I wanted to, this is sort of off topic or what we're talking about now, but I think it's a very relevant question. I also ask most of my guests, especially in 2023, since January, artificial intelligence got launched, ChatGPT. I read an article last week that is actually you can actually prompt chat. Well, I know this as well. You can actually prompt the ChatGPT to write your full script, so a movie script, TV script, so forth. And even a poem, anything, any form of creative writing. I've used it in my own capacity as well. I think it's quite effective. It also cuts down a lot of menial jobs. So as an editor, do you guys have I guess tools in place to sort of if you open for submissions to know if this is by the person, or if it's written by AI. And are you do you think the technology is a potential threat, or is it a potential collaborator?
Well, to answer your question, we don't have tools in place. We'll be none the wiser if somebody decided that, you know what, I'm going to write my poem using ChatGPT, or I'm going to write my prose piece using ChatGPT. Maybe down the line we'll have something like that, but for the moment we don't. But yeah, it's something to think about. I'll note that. It's definitely something to think about.
There is tools that you can, off the top of my head, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it exists where you can where the app scans the document and see. So but
Okay.
I'm just interested to know that I had a conversation with a few visual artists early on in this year, around January, late January, February, there around, where the concern was raised that like this technology might potentially take over our work. I mean, the app gets over 1 billion prompts a day, which is substantial. That is substantial. And so, for example, I'll just give you a working example. So for portraits, I think that the technology will most probably take over. Usually if you have a family thingy, you got an artist and they paint, draw, whatever your family. Now you can just prompt the technology and it's quicker. There was also a story. Let me just tell you the story. It was also a few months ago, where some Asian looking fella in the States was reading his daughter a storybook, and he felt that he could write his own book. And within 72 hours later, he had the printed copy in his hand. 72 hours later. I mean, like you guys know how, so that's something. So it also takes off I guess some wind from publishers. I think publishers itself is under threat there. So did you guys have, as with with the staff and so forth, are these concerns? Did you guys raise these points? Are they, we are, I mean, just sorry, before you answer, pardon, living in South Africa, we have load shedding constantly. We also like to believe that we are a bit of a backward thing, which is not true. Yeah, sure, load shedding is fucked up and this and that, but this technology is available and it's been used like where we are right now. So it's not something that's happening, across the Pacific. That's my point. So you guys, are you aware? You get what I'm asking.
Well, what I will say as well is I acknowledge that the technology is always getting updated as well. I think right now it cannot write in an African voice yet. It doesn't include isiZulu or Xhosa properly, but it'll probably be updated.
It'll get smarter. It can write in various, but it'll get smarter. But anyway, sorry,
Yeah.
not
No, it's no problem. So one of my friends who's a web developer, digital marketer, he prompted ChatGPT to write a poem as myself. And it was hot garbage, but I understand it eventually. It will get to the point where there'll be no distinction as to who wrote what. Like I might write my piece. It might even be better than me as well. That's another thing. So in terms of, to answer your question of being a threat, down the line it will be. But I still respect and admire the human touch, the creative pursuit, that whole reward of persevering in the arts. It all begins with a blank page, and it's so important to emphasize the point that there is value in the creative endeavor. That story just told about the person who wrote a book in 72 hours, he'll never understand what it took for the real
I agree with you.
craft-heavy author.
I agree with
And
you.
so someone can come and submit to New Contrast using AI, but that's between them and their conscience for now. Like, even that, I'm not somebody who's gonna go and like look up whether they did it or not. If it's good, then it's good. But there should be some sort of integrity as well. I would actually speak to the idea of actually having produced your own work. The whole thing of plagiarism in institutions as well is something that I also
Yep.
I am for it. We should produce authentic work that was created by us, but it's gonna get a lot more difficult to do this. Even those apps that are there to detect these technologies will probably be able to bypass those things as well. So the best way is just to, look at the work as far as you know. And if it feels like a robot wrote it, I think maybe innately within us, we might be able to detect it as well. But maybe I'm just being a bit too much of an idealist at that stage. But yeah, the creative endeavor is the beautiful thing. And I think this thing of AI, it's a threat, yes, but of course we got to ask about the person who uses it and their integrity and the issue that they have inside. Like, what kind of artist are you if you need a
I'd
crutch,
just like to raise a point on top of that. Also, another reason why I'm bringing this thing up is also to or let me explain it to like this. I think publications, journals like yourselves is needed now more than ever. Because this technology is becoming more popular. I mean, Ice Cube mentioned early on in the week also, he was pretty pissed off about this and that, and he had some nasty things to say. And I can totally hear him. But if you rewind the clock back, less than 20 years ago, they said the same thing about what was this? What was this before iTunes? Anyway, there was another app before iTunes that you could illegally download music. Musicians said the same thing or similar. They were as frustrated. And 15 years, 20 years later, it's now they've adapted. So I do believe that we will adapt, but I do believe that publications like yourself and various other art galleries and music companies, production companies, and so forth, it's the onus is for them to set the standard and to call the shots, to say that we can only use it for this, for that, which is also why I'm bringing it up, is to see what else, how other guys, are thinking about it and so on. So yeah, that's just my point. That's just my final point regarding technology. Kabza, you had something to say, my brother?
Yeah, I mean, I think in forging identity as a person in the world, you come from somewhere, and that is maybe the idea that the body itself is like a memory of the ancestors. I look like someone, I reflect someone in the past. The language that I speak, the way that I move, it is all about belonging to this particular space and time. And I think that cannot be taken away by technologies and so forth, because even the body itself is far more of a complex technology itself. It's a complex technology itself. The way that we have developed and evolved in our thinking, with these new roles that Sihle is currently occupying, the role that you are currently occupying as somebody who has a podcast. We are all using these technologies to tell our stories. And I think that in itself, it's the notion that the body itself is a part, it's a member of a particular society. And the skin itself has myths and histories that are shared through going through these experiences and these common spaces. And I think, I mean, with that said, I mean, I mean, like myself and I've shared specific spaces with both of you gentlemen. You know, Sihle. I mean, I remember the first with your first book, and then we're sharing the reading at my space in Grahamstown. You know, before the launch. You know, and maybe I'd like you to touch a little bit on that. You know, and how the journey has stretched out and played out itself over time. As someone who's now going on their third book, I still want to hear, you know, the oral aspect in your reading. I mean, I know you read, but I'd love to hear the voice, you know, of the poet. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that vividly as well, that experience of going to your space and reading from Stranger, which was my first collection in 2015, because I
Yes.
was so nervous to read at the time. Like I still get very nervous to read even now. Like I feel like I'm a better reader of my own work, but you know, the thought of having someone read my work for me has always crossed my mind as well. But yeah, it's just the whole idea of reading the work that I know so well, you know. I'm always into minds. But I do remember that we played a lot of hip hop music there. We were playing some old school jazz rap. I think
Yeah.
we might have played some Tribe, some Wu-Tang, you know, the greats. And yeah, like up to now, you know, it's one of the great memories I think I have of you, Kabelo.
Yeah.
That time period as well. The Rhodes Makanda art scene was really a great time. Like we got to go to art galleries, Fella Nation as well. The people met Fella Nation. People came to my house at one stage as well. We had a nice session
Yes.
there. And you took the photograph of the mother and child Madonna portrait that's in your book as well, you know. And I was
Yes.
happy that I was
Yes.
able to contribute that for you as well.
Wow.
And
Thank you.
so now that we're here, 2023, I got actually 4 books. Got another chapbook coming out in the US called The Nation, alongside Zabala's Republic in also Botsotso, both coming out in July.
Okay.
So yeah, I've been a very busy person. But
Yeah.
yeah, always grateful for the opportunities to produce work while we still can as well, while we still have people who will read the work as well. Because yeah, there's a whole thing about the art world. You can go in and out of fashion as well. So yeah, like I stick to my guns. I stick to what I like to do. I work hard, hard as anybody, perhaps even harder, to my own detriment. But I do my best. I always work on the reading the work properly. And yeah, we have great colleagues around us. Even Wesley Pepper. I'm sure after this we'll be in touch again. And
Thank you, my brother.
yeah, it's just building community and just doing what's best for the arts and what's best for Black arts as well. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Gentlemen, I think that's actually a great point to sort of wrap it all up. We are running out of time anyway. Sihle, just like in closing, just to all the listeners, where can they get hold of you or New Contrast? So like web pages, email addresses, so forth, and social medias and so on.
Okay, so most importantly, I'll start with New Contrast. www.newcontrast.net. That's our website. Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Kabelo's holding up, block my face too, so you can't see me. And then on Instagram, we're on Instagram, New Contrast. Just search it there, you'll find us. New Contrast Lit on Twitter. Then for me personally, it's Sihle X Ntuli, at Sihle X Ntuli on all social media platforms except Facebook. Not really a fan of Facebook, but maybe eventually go back there. With regards to my books, you can find Rumbling on Take a Lot. And of course, Botsotso will be soon launching my new collection, Zabala's Republic, that's set to come out in July. That's for all my South African readers. And if you're based in the US, The Nation is also coming out in July from Riverglass Books. So yeah, we're just trying to get what we can for this poetry thing everywhere we can get it. And people can look forward to new contracts as well in July. So yeah, thanks for having me.
For sure. And I will
before you go,
also
Wes, just
sure.
before you go, Wes, is it possible that you could get Sihle to read a piece from maybe from Rumbling?
Okay, I don't think the time will allow for this year, but what we
Yes.
can do is if you can. Okay, yeah, sorry, my speaker's there. So what you can do, you can just send me the the video clip, and I'll just attach it through to this episode. I will publish this episode as on the 27th, which is tomorrow, on Saturday. And just to my listeners, I think I'm gonna, instead of publishing this thing is just making listeners, I'll be publishing I'm moving the publishing date now. It's supposed to be a Friday every week to a Saturday. That's just to get more hits and listens and so forth. So simply, if you can do it via email, I'll attach it through to this, and I'll add it on towards the end of the episode. And just to both my guests, guys, thanks a lot for coming through, man. Kabza, it was great to co-host with you, my brother. It was very organic. It was very spontaneous. I love it. It's good. Sihle, much love, my king, to all your publications. We will definitely be in touch, and let's talk about collaboration and see how we can forward each other's business. And to my listeners, remember to like, subscribe, and comment on this channel. I will be recording with Asar Kebelan over the weekend as well, so look forward to African Genius podcast as well. We've got some guests lined up there too. And keep warm and stay well, gentlemen. And I'll be in touch with both of you via all these other apps in the course of the week. One love, gents.
Hola.
Salute.
Salute.